That morning, I opened my locker like any other day, and there it was, the red letters stretched across the cold metal like a wound that hadn't stopped bleeding. Gay loser. The paint was still wet. I could smell the sting of chemicals blending with laughter in the air. Behind me, footsteps dragged against the floor. "Oh, it suits you, Miller," someone said. Another voice laughed louder. "Did you write it yourself? For attention?" I didn't turn around. I just stood there, staring at the word that suddenly felt heavier than my own name. I am Ethan Miller, 16 years old, a student at Westmont High. I play basketball. I keep my head down. I try to laugh when they do, speak when it feels safe. I've always believed that if I worked hard enough, if I scored high enough, they'd have to accept me. But belonging isn't something you earn here. It's something they decide for you, long before you ever get a chance to prove yourself. That morning changed everything. The laughter behind me never really stopped. It just followed me, into every hallway, every glance, every silence. The coach saw the locker, looked once, and said, "Clean it up. Don't make a big deal out of it." Then he walked away. I nodded, even though my hands were shaking. I tried to scrub the red paint, but it only smeared, spreading like a stain that refused to fade. I could still hear them whispering, pretending not to look at me. Every step I took felt louder, heavier, like I was walking through their judgment. That was the first time I realized how cruelty really works. It doesn't always shout. Sometimes, it just laughs, while you disappear quietly beside it. I tried to act normal after that morning. Pretend nothing had changed. I laughed when they laughed, tied my shoes, dribbled, shot hoops, counted seconds. But even when I wasn't looking, I could feel it. Their eyes, the small pause that came every time I walked into the room. Dylan and Matt were the first to say something. They always were. "Guess you wrote it yourself, huh?" Dylan said, smirking. "Trying to get some attention?" Matt added, his voice full of fake pity. I didn't answer. Silence was easier. It gave me the illusion of control, though deep down I knew it made them bolder. At practice, Coach Harris watched me miss a pass. He blew his whistle once, short and sharp. "Focus," he said. Then his tone softened just enough to sting. "And don't make a big deal out of that locker thing, Miller. We've got a tournament coming up." I wanted to tell him it was a big deal, that it wasn't just paint, it was a label, something I didn't ask for and couldn't scrub off. But I only nodded. The team laughed louder that day. Their jokes weren't about basketball anymore. When I reached for my water bottle, someone muttered, "Careful, he might be into you." The others burst out laughing. Ryan, who used to defend me, stared at the floor. I told myself to breathe, to ignore it, to keep playing. But the noise followed me even after the game ended. In the locker room, conversation stopped the moment I entered. Phones were quickly tucked away. The air turned thick, heavy. It felt like everyone was waiting for me to break. I kept my head down and changed in silence. My hands shook as I zipped my bag. It wasn't just the words anymore, it was the way people looked at me, the way their laughter echoed even after they'd left the room, the way Ryan's silence cut deeper than any insult. Every night I replayed the moment I saw that red paint. The letters glowed in my mind, bright and cruel. I started to wonder who had done it. Dylan? Matt? Or someone who stood beside me on the court, smiling, pretending to be a teammate. Maybe it didn't matter anymore, because now it wasn't just one person's handwriting on my locker, it was everyone's silence, written over me every single day. Everything got worse after that. The team stopped passing me the ball. Even when I was wide open, they'd look right through me, pretending not to hear my voice. I could feel the air change every time practice began, like I was standing on the wrong side of a line I couldn't see. The whispers started spreading faster than the drills. Someone said I liked watching people change in the locker room. Another said I'd been caught staring. Lies grew like mold in the corners of the gym, dark and sticky, and no one bothered to ask if any of it was true. One afternoon I walked in after class, the room half empty, the sound of lockers slamming echoing off the walls. A few guys laughed quietly. I didn't think much of it until I noticed one of them, Josh, holding up his phone, angled just enough to catch me in the frame. When our eyes met, he grinned and slipped it into his bag. That night, a video appeared online. The title read, "The Quiet Kid in the Locker Room." It wasn't even humiliating by what it showed. Just me, standing there, silent, awkward, existing. But the comments turned it into something else entirely. They twisted every second into a punchline. By the next morning, everyone had seen it. People I didn't even know whispered when I passed. Some laughed. Some looked away. A few recorded me again when they thought I wasn't paying attention. My name became a hashtag, a joke people could share. I tried to walk through the halls like I didn't care, but it felt like every pair of eyes burned through me. I sat in class, hearing the muffled buzz of phones, the quiet laughter behind me. Even Ryan avoided my gaze now, his silence heavier than the noise. I wanted to disappear, but somehow I already had. The Ethan I used to be, the one who loved the game, who stayed late after practice just to shoot a few more baskets, he was gone. What was left was just a shadow, walking the same halls, pretending not to hear the laughter echoing behind it. I went to Ryan because he was the only one I still trusted. We'd been friends since middle school, the kind who stayed after practice, trading jokes no one else found funny. I thought if anyone would believe me, it would be him. "Ryan," I said quietly, "you know I didn't do what they're saying, right?" He didn't answer. Just looked down at his shoes, dribbling an invisible ball against the floor. The silence stretched until it stopped being silence. It became an answer. "You don't believe me," I whispered. He shook his head, still not meeting my eyes. "I just don't want to get involved, okay? It's complicated." Complicated. That word hit harder than any insult I'd heard all week. I wanted to shout, to remind him how many times I'd had his back, how many nights we'd walked home together talking about college, about life after all this. But I didn't. I just nodded, pretending to understand. That night, I couldn't sleep. The glow from my phone kept pulling my eyes toward it. Messages, notifications, tags. And then I saw it. A screenshot of a group chat, the same one that had posted the video. The names were blurred, except one. His. Ryan Cooper. For a second, I thought maybe it was fake. Maybe someone used his name. But when I scrolled down, I saw his words. Short, casual, sharp enough to cut. Can't believe he still shows up. Guess he likes the attention. It felt like the floor opened beneath me. I stared at the screen until the words blurred into static. My chest hurt, but not from anger, from something colder. I deleted his number. My thumb hovered over the photos, the ones from last summer, our uniforms, our stupid smiles. I didn't delete them. Not yet. I kept one picture, the two of us standing on the court, arms around each other, sweat and sunlight on our faces. I kept it not because I missed him, but because I needed proof. Proof that friendship can be sharp enough to wound. Proof that sometimes the person standing beside you is the one who holds the knife. I went to Coach Harris the next day. My heart was pounding, but I told myself it had to be done. When he looked up from his clipboard, I asked, "Coach, you know about the video, right?" He sighed like I'd just reminded him of something inconvenient. "Yeah, I heard," he said, not meeting my eyes. "Don't make it complicated, Miller. They're just joking around." Joking. That word again. It had become the excuse for everything. Every whisper, every stare, every cruel laugh. I wanted to tell him that jokes don't follow you home, that jokes don't make you afraid to check your phone. But my voice wouldn't come out. He patted my shoulder once the way you'd calm a child and walked away. I stood there staring at the empty court, listening to the echo of bouncing balls from the next room. That night, I stayed late after everyone left. The locker room smelled of sweat and cleaning spray. My locker had been painted over, white this time, but under the thin layer I could still see it, the faint outline of the letters. Gay loser. I traced my fingers over the metal. The paint flaked slightly, and red dust clung to my skin. I thought maybe if I kept scrubbing, I could make it disappear. But some things don't come off, no matter how hard you try. The silence felt endless. Heavy. It pressed against my ears until I could hear my own breathing, uneven and small. People think silence means peace. That if you stop talking about it, it stops hurting. But silence isn't peace. It's surrender. It's the space you crawl into when the world refuses to listen. That night, I didn't cry. I just sat there in front of that locker until the lights went out, watching the wall fade into darkness and feeling like I was fading with it. I remembered what Mrs. Coleman once told me during a counseling session. "Sometimes," she said softly, "courage isn't about fighting back. It's about naming what's killing you." Those words had stayed buried somewhere in the back of my mind, quiet but alive. That night, they came back, clear, steady. So I started gathering everything. Screenshots, messages, the chat where they laughed about the video, the comments they posted, the jokes they shared. Proof that what they called fun was something else entirely, humiliation dressed up as laughter. Each time I opened my phone, my hands trembled. The more I scrolled, the colder I felt. Their words weren't loud, but they cut deep, sharp in their carelessness. A dozen little knives hiding behind emojis and short sentences. I saved every piece of it. My photo folder filled up with evidence of people I once called friends. Ryan's name kept appearing, his reactions, his replies. Every time I saw it, my chest tightened. But I didn't look away. Not this time. For weeks I had been erasing myself to stay invisible. Now, for the first time, I was collecting the pieces they tried to erase. The more I saw, the angrier I became. Not the kind of anger that explodes. It was quiet, focused, like a flame that burns without flickering. I didn't know what I would do yet. I only knew I couldn't let it stay buried. The truth was ugly, but it was mine now. When I closed my phone, I stared at my reflection in the dark screen. My face looked tired, but there was something else behind it. A decision forming slowly, like light breaking through the cracks. And this time, I didn't turn it off. Monday morning, I walked into the office with a thick envelope in my hand. My palms were sweating, but I didn't let go. When the principal looked up, I placed it on his desk. "Everything you need to know is in there," I said. My voice came out steadier than I expected. He looked at the envelope, then at me, but I didn't stay to see his reaction. I turned around and walked out before the silence could pull me back. That was the last day I wore the team jersey. I left it folded on the bench in the locker room, the same bench where they once laughed at me. No tears, no anger, no regret, just a strange kind of calm. Every step I took down the hallway echoed against the walls, sharp and clean, like something inside me was breaking free. Each footstep felt like shedding an old version of myself. By Friday, the rumors had changed. Everyone knew. The administration had the screenshots, the videos, the messages. The investigation started, and suddenly no one was laughing anymore. A week later, the news came. They were suspended. Dylan, Matt, Josh. The same names that used to be called for starting lineup announcements now came up in the morning bulletin, read by a voice that didn't flinch. In class, Ryan sat 2 rows ahead. He didn't turn around. He didn't have to. I could feel the weight of his silence pressing between us. Once, he might have passed me a note, cracked a joke, met my eyes with that old grin. Now, he just stared at his notebook as if it held something worth saving. Coach Harris never said a word. Not to me, not to anyone. He just avoided my gaze whenever we crossed paths in the hall. Maybe he felt guilty, or maybe it was easier to pretend nothing had happened, like all of this was just another game we'd lost. But it wasn't a loss. It was something else. For the first time, I didn't feel invisible. The whispers had stopped. The laughter had stopped. And in that quiet, I could finally breathe again. As I walked home that day, the sound of my footsteps followed me, steady, deliberate, no longer afraid. It didn't feel like revenge. It felt like survival, like I had finally chosen myself. The locker room wall was painted white again. New, clean, silent. They said it looked better that way. "Fresh start," someone joked. The laughter returned. The noise, the chatter, the games. Everything slid back into place as if nothing had ever happened. But I knew better. I could still see the faint outline beneath the paint when the light hit just right. The memory of those red letters that once defined me. They had tried to erase what happened, to bury it under a layer of gloss. Maybe that's what people do when they're uncomfortable with truth. Cover it until it looks harmless. I still walked the same halls, still sat in the same classrooms. No one whispered anymore, but they didn't talk to me either. I existed quietly, somewhere between forgotten and free. And maybe that was enough for now. Some mornings, I'd stop by the gym before class, stand at the doorway, and look at the wall. It wasn't anger I felt anymore, just distance. Like the pain had become something I could hold without breaking. Silence used to scare me. It used to feel like a punishment, a reminder of how alone I was. But now, silence is different. It's the sound of everything I survived. They painted over the wall, but not over me. And for the first time, I wasn't afraid to stand there, in the quiet, unhidden, still breathing.